enlarge the text. So just execute the command php artisan serve. Okay, I know, not artisan, php artisan tinker, not serve. Okay, so we have this tinker or sci shell. And in here we can execute php commands. So echo hello. So we can execute php commands, but in here we are going to populate our database or table with the data for our post table. So opening our table. So okay, so we have these columns in our table. So with that, okay, going back also to the users table. So we have these users available in our PageRemy admin. So from users. So we have this James Gosling as an ID of 3. So this let's create three users with okay, so we forgot to add the default image in our no. So let's set the default image for now. So who's the avatar? Let's use this one as our default image. Okay. And so C some htdocs okay, so storage app public avatars. So let's name this one default.png. Okay. Okay, so since we have now this default, so we can now use this one for our data population in our database. So we will use the Tinker. First, let's import the models. Use app models for the user. Use app models for the post. And we will use the for password creation, we need to use the hash. Wait, so let's open the text editor. What is the location? Okay, so let's just copy this one and paste it in here. Hash, and I think that's all. So now let's create a user. So user equals to new user. So we have this new instance of our user. So let's supply the data that we must have for this for this user. User must have a first name. So I think we will create 3 users. Since we have 1 For James Gosling, this we will add 2 instances of user. So Jane, no, Charles Babbage. No, first name. So user, last name, Babbage. User, for the avatar, it's default. So it's okay um, to skip that one. So the bio, this is the bio of Charles Babbage. So user, then for the email, so it's charlesbabbage@email.com. So for the password, so it is hash make password. Then we will save this one. Let's try saving this one and see if, okay. So the line or the save is successful since uh, the the code that we execute is the a user save returns true, which means that the data for this user or for this instance was saved successfully in our database. So if we reload our PHP so we can now see this new row that has an ID of 4. Okay, so we will add um, a new user again. And since we are going to add a new, then we should at least have a new instantiation. So new user again. So which means we are creating a new user. So user first name is Alexander Bell. So user bio. This is the bio of Alexander. So user, the next is email. So Alexander Graham Bell at email.com. So user password is hash make password. So this is for the encryption. User save. So which means we've created this one also. Okay, so notice here for the password encryption. So as you can see, even though we've used the same password, but the encryption for the password is here in our database is different. So which means the security of Laravel in terms of password protection is very robust. Okay. Okay, so let's proceed to the next. So since we've added 2 users, so we have 3 users for our testing, we can now add our post. So looking back to our post structure, so we will need to have or to assign user ID. So the user ID that we have for our testing is 3, 4, and 5, I think. 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So we will be assigning 3 posts per user. So, and I think the fastest way to create that one is in our text editor. So let's have post, new post. Then the post must have a user ID. So this is for the tree or for Charles or um, James Gosling. So post title, the first post of user with an ID 3. Then post body. Okay, so it won't work with the, so we must at least use a blade. Let's close this for now. Okay, so we have this one. Okay, so I think let's change this to each. Okay. Okay, so post body saved. So new instance again. Second, third. So we have now the 3 posts for a single user, for the user that has an ID of 3. Now, the next is for the user that has an ID 4. Or with an ID of 4. So the next is for the user that has an ID of 5. Okay, so with that, let's copy all of the code and paste it in our Tinker. Okay, so there's no error with our Tinker. So if we reload our post, okay, so we have now this post from our in our post table. So we have now the rows. So 9 rows since we have 3 posts per user and we have 3 users. Okay, so now the next thing that we will configure is the relationship of our model. So in Laravel, so we have this ORM or the object relational mapping. So when ORM. So relationships. Okay. So we have relationships like one-to-one, one-to-many. So this is why I mentioned kanina na before you will develop your Laravel application, you must have at least the robust design of your database for you to at least define the relationships in your model. Okay? So okay, let's open the one-to-many. So in our table structure, so looking back in our database design, so opening our database designer. Okay, so the relationship of user and post is one user can have 0 or many posts, but the post, the minimum cardinality of post is it must have at least one user or many posts. Okay, so let's proceed now to the relationship definition of our models. So going back to the okay, going back to our code. So we can now close this one and we will open the model inside of our folder app. We have this folder model, so the post. So now the post can have, or we must use the or import the user in this model. So app models then user. Okay, and now we will now analyze to what relationship this post and user have. So we all know that a post user can have many posts. Okay, so and a single post is owned by a single user. So that means that the post public function user. So this model has one relationship to the user class, and the ID or the reference for the user and the post table is the user ID. Okay, so which means that we are declaring or stating that a single post has one user. 'Di ba? Kasi yung isang post may isa talagang author or isang writer or nag-post or may isang nagmamay-ari ng isang post. So, yun lang yung analysis dito. Kaya has one yung ginamit natin. Okay? So, has one. And for the model user, so for the model user, let's define it in here. So, public function. Let's define post. So before we complete that, let's import first the app models post. So now let's return this has many post class. Then the reference from the post to this model is the user ID and okay, and the ID. So we all know that the user ID is our foreign key from the post table. So that is why we must place the user ID in here. And the ID, so the second argument, which means that what is our reference of this user ID? User ID. So we supply the ID since the user ID is our reference to the user ID. Okay? So again, has many since a user can have one or many posts. Okay, so maybe let's try this one in our dashboard. So home, since, okay, let's reload for a while. Okay, so in our controller, since we've declared these relationships of our model, then let's try and render the data from our user. Okay, so now we will be using this. No, first, let's import the post. app models post. So in this case, let's get all the post with user get. Okay, let's dive down for now to see what data that does this code returns. Okay, so we have 9 items, and we have 1 relations to user, and attributes. Okay. Okay, so now, as you can see in our output, that there's this data that the collection, or there's data of post. So as you can see, we have 9 posts that was rendered from our database. Ay, okay po. Sorry po. I think I'm too fast. My pacing is not friendly na. Okay, so let me explain the ano po. So thank you po sa pag-remind. So what topic po na gusto niyo pong explain ko ulit? Hello?
Sir, question po.
Apo.
Yung, sir, kasi kanina, di ba, gumamit kayo ng Tinker to generate yung password, tapos nakahash siya. Paano niyo po siya ilalagin kung nakahash na yung value?
Okay, so in the Laravel documentation, sir, so in the generated scaffolding po is may code po siya na existing from the Laravel itself. So if gusto mo siya so parang ito po, sa login controller. So the login controller itself is empty po, since all of the functionalities po is nandito sa authenticate users. But in the Laravel po, if gusto nyo po manual yung register or login, so let's open the documentation po. So ano? Authentication, okay. So ito po, ito po yung code or the example in the Laravel po. If you want to manually authenticate the users po or the login or form from the form, then it will send a request to the server. Then for the email and password, so the validation, and after the validation, the credentials will attempt to validate those email and password. So nandito na po yung functionality sa auth po na class. So it's not manually po na i-decrypt yung encrypted po. So since it is automatically po for example po dito sa auth attempt, then email, then you'll supply the email, then the password, then the password. So ganun po.
Pero sir, yung kanina, halimbawa si user 3, paano niya siya ilalagin para matest natin?
Using the password po, yung ginamit po natin as our key before siya na-encrypt. So, let's try na lang po to log in it.
Oh.
Let's log in na lang po. Sige, let's log out this one. And, so, user. Okay, so password lang po yung ilalagay ko po. So automatically po, na-redirect na tayo dito. Since we've edited the code, so I'll just comment na lang po para makita nyo po yung ito po. So there's no need po to manually decrypt the encrypted password po. So that is the edge po of Laravel since they have developed this application or this functionality wherein automatically it will encrypt the data po.
Okay, okay po. So, thank you po.
Okay po. So may questions pa po ba? Yung codes lang actually. Okay. So I think may sumasabay po na ano. Okay, I'm sorry po if I'm a bit too fast in my pacing. So ito po. Going back po to our thinker. So yung code po na ginamit ko is yung code po na ginamit ko for the thinker is this po. PHP Artisan Tinker to initialize the tinker. Then used all of the required classes from the models for the user and post and for the hash. So for us to for the password generation purposes and for the instantiation po. So the concept lang po naman is the same. So the concept is the same naman po throughout the data populating. So ang concept lang po talaga niya is first, you need to instantiate the class or the model. In here po is user. Then next is you'll need to supply the values from using the properties po sa class or sa model. So yung properties po ng ating object are the column names. Kaya po user first name, then user last name, then user bio, then user email, and user password. And the rest po, since optional po sila, like the avatar and so on, so pwede na po silang i-skip. So after we've decided na final na yung data natin, so we've saved that instance po, yung object nating ginamit pag-instantiate. So we've saved that data in our database. So we've used this command. We invoke the save method. So which means that this line returns a true value, which means that the data that we added for this instance were saved successfully in our database table. And the same process po na ginawa ko sa throughout the users. And for the post creation po, is ganito po ang nangyari. Same din yung concept. Nag-instantiate po nag-instantiate ng class or ng model wherein yung post. Okay, so wait lang po saglit. Okay, so the concept po of this post is the same lang po sa paggawa ng user. So I've instantiated the model, stored in the post variable, using the post variable, so as an object, then we've accessed the properties of this object, the column names po, user. That's why user ID, I've assigned the 3 since this is the third user or the user that has an ID of 3. Then the post title, the body, and since wala nang columns that we need to store or to add or to supply data, then I've in-invoke ko na po yung method na save. So after po na invoke, then true. And the same pattern po that will happen for the rest of the data. And the thing, ang nag-iba lang po talaga is the user ID. Since I've set the 3 post for user that has an ID of 3 and the second 3 post for the user that has an ID of 4 and so on po. And after po the na-execute yung ating data population for the post. So we can actually exit our tinker and nag-set na po tayo ng relationship of our user or model, the post model and the user model. So we have this relationship, or we define this relationship in the user model. So in this user model po, nag-define tayo ng relationship. Custom lang po ito. So any name po will do. So in my case, mas gusto ko po nakaganito kasi post, meaning yung relationship nila is logically related to the functionality since the user can have 0 or many posts. So since 1 is to many, kaya posts yung ginamit ko as the name of this function. But you can name it anything that you like po. So the next po is we've defined the relationship. So this, which means this user itself has many posts or can have, or the user the user can have many or 0 or many posts. So user, we're in the first argument of this has many function is the model of our post class, or the model post, then calling its class. Then the third or the second argument is the foreign key that is in this post. So since we've defined a foreign key in the post table, then we must specify the column in the second argument. And then the third argument po is ito po yung ating basis for this table itself for the user. Since we all know that the model is the blueprint of our table. So for the Laravel po, to identify the relationship of user and ID for the post table that has a column of user, and in the user table that the primary key is the ID, then you can specify it in the third argument. So pag nagkabaliktad po ito, mangyayari po is hindi na po mag-work yung ating application. Okay? So always remember po that has many, pag has many or has one, the first argument is the second argument is the column name of the table equivalent of this model. Kasi po minsan nagkakabaliktad yan sila. So the same what will happen if you're going to use the belongs to. So we have also the belongs to. Ito. So kung meron po tayong has one, meron din po tayong belongs to. So ito po is ang kabaliktaran nila. So if you're going to use this one, you must test your code thoroughly. Kasi po minsan pag belongs to yung ginamit mo, instead of 1:1, so for example dito, so that means that this columns po is magkakabaliktad na yan sila. So kaya po testing lang po talaga sa ating code, and also reading the documentation will help us a lot po in our development. Okay, so that's all po for the relationships of our models. So now So now with the user controller, so first thing that I do is I import, in-include ko po dito yung app, models, and post. So, as well as the user. So, in-include ko po sa taas ng ating user controller, and in the index po na method, so I've declared this variable. So, first post. So, which means that the post, we will get all the post data, and we will include and call also the function user inside of our post model. So if you, again, if we will open the post model, makikita po natin dito yung user na function. So that is the reason po kaya user yung ginawa ko dito, or yung ginamit ko po dito. So using the get, or pwede din po first. So makikita nyo po yung ganito na pag-access sa ating Laravel documentation. So going back to our Laravel documentation, nasa ORM pa din po yan na topic, pero yung sa getting started na. Sa first. So meron getting started. Oh, I think this the getting started is all about the configuration of our model. Also for the creation, so you can also see the creation here in the getting started. For the updates, for the mass update, then I think wala po sa getting started, but in the collections. Okay, so here po is we can set conditions like where active is equal to 1, or where post is equal to 3. So for example po, in this case, gusto lang natin kunin or i-render yung post based kung sino yung nakalagin na user. So in that case, kailangan natin yung access for that specific user. So for that, let's add, or let's format our code so that we can understand it clearly. So where the user ID is equal to the auth user, then the ID of that currently login user, then we will use get. Okay, so right now, meaning we are getting the we will fetch the data from our post table that has a user ID of the currently logged in user. So right now, previously, nire-render niya lahat ng data from our users table, from our post table. But now, we've set a condition in our model where that kunin lang natin yung user ID from the currently logged in user. Okay? So right now po, meron na lang tayong tatlong items. Okay? Tatlong items kasi again, we've set that sa Tinker ko kanina, nag-set ako na tatlong post lang per user. Okay? So attributes, and we have these relations. So this user is the owner of this post. So, okay, Alexander Bell. Okay? So that is how we render data from our post using the relationship of our model. So, compared po sa manually joining them, so mas maganda po ito kasi you'll just have to use the method. Unlike other frameworks na you'll need to do it manually. I think, I don't know since I don't have the experience po for other frameworks, but using the native of PHP lang po, compared po talaga dito, so mas maganda po talaga if we are using Laravel since we can define relationships. So right now po, we can render this data and pass this data into our view. So post, then the post. Okay? So same concept po yung ginawa natin kahapon sa activity natin. Wherein ang kaibahan lang sa activity natin is that hinard code lang po natin yung data na nire-render natin sa ating view. But right now po, we are now accessing the data from our database using our model. Okay, so going back to our views folder, views, then folder user home. So let's render the data. So since this is a post, I think it's a good idea to use. So let's use the count method to test if the post is greater than 0. Okay, so um, I think let's add the else na. Else the there this user doesn't have any post. Okay, so now we can use a card, I think. Okay, so let's use a div row, div call md, call since a 3, so 4. So let's use card. I know div card. So card header, card h3, card title, card body. So h3, card title. So feed. So is this where our for each? So we replace our for each in here as post, and for each. Okay, so um I think maybe 4 na lang since tatlo lang yung post. Card title is the post title, then the post body. So let's have a small for the date, posted by post user. So the user first name, last name, on. So post created at. Okay. So let's try and reload. Let's try reloading our browser and okay. So 29. So null given home.blade post count if it's greater than 0. Okay, so let's check our code. Count user controller. Okay, so we must, since this is an array, so it is a good practice to use the plural ano. Okay, so we have now this post. So I think let's clear those existing text. Yun. Okay, so we have now this output. So which means that this user has five, three posts. So this is a user with an ID 5. Okay, so this is Alexander Bell. So let's try logging in using this credentials. Password. Okay, so this is Charles Babbage. So with an ID of 4. So all of the posts that was rendered. So as you can see at the bottom part, so posted by Charles Babbage. Okay, so that is uh so that is our relationship data or data access that we did for the view. That's why we're able to render the name of the author of that post. So okay, so if we remove those condition in our home or in our user controller, so let's try removing this where. Okay. No, we can only comment. So it's okay to comment. I think this won't work. Let's ano lang, have a copy for you as your resources since I will be pushing this one in the GitHub. Let's remove the where and see. So for you to see all of the authors per post. Oh, so we must have a margin top. Card margin top 2. Okay. So as you can see, let's use the magnifier. So we have a post here posted by James Gosling and a post posted by Charles Babbage. So posted by Alexander Bell and with on 2022, so on. Okay? Questions or clarifications? Hello? Anyone from the participants po can ask questions po if you have. Hello? Anyone? So let's check if this condition will work. So let's, okay, this user doesn't have any post. Okay. Okay, anyone po? If you have questions po, do not hesitate to unmute your mic. Hello? Are you still there po ba? Okay, so clear po ba yung explanation or gusto nyo pa po bang ibalik ko po pag-explain? Okay, so that's good. So we have our response na clear daw. How about the other, ano po, yung data lang po. Bakit po yung data? Sa data po na yung pag-establish po ng relationship from the models po. Parang ganon, or doon po sa pag-add ng data from our thinker to data, populating. Okay po. This is, I will explain na lang po ulit. So the pattern lang po talaga for this po is you have to call the model. Ito po. So make sure that the model is used in at the top of your document ba or PHP file or in the controller. So if na-use nyo na po yung model, then you can now instantiate po. The same po yung mga demonstration natin sa first day. Yung we have a class, tapos we instantiate it, and we supplied values for it. Then, after supplying the values, then in Laravel, we will invoke the save method. Okay? And since, and also this meeting is in, or we have also the recorded version of this meeting naman po. So, if you want to repeat or you want also to review the, or when you are coding your activity na po, pwede nyo naman po review ang ating recorded version po sa ating seminar. Okay, suggestion lang po, pwede po through factory para mas mabilis. Yes po. Yes po. The objective lang po today that I'll demonstrate to you how to use the, so if you want po, pwede din po sa factory. But, okay, so here's the thing po. If you are using the factory, so ganito lang po talaga. We'll just have to use the Laravel documentation po. Okay, parang ganito po. Since the Laravel factories are using Faker po. So meaning, they are generating data po randomly. So yung from the factories na class. Okay? So, meron din po akong ginagamit. So I don't usually use the factories. So yung ginagamit ko po is sa seeders lang. So ganito po ang kadalasan kong ginagawa sa aking projects. So I have, okay, so let me close this one for a while. Since na crowded na. So in database, seeder. So for the seeder, I will define the thinker statements in here in my seeder. So if I run the seeder command, then my user or the data in my migrations will be, or the data or my, the table for the user or the post will be populated. So pwede pong ganito, app models user, post lang na lang muna. So post. So let's add post, new post. So instantiating single instance of our post. So user ID. So 4. Then post title. A post from the okay. Post save. Okay, so here we have this one row po. So if we will going to execute the seed, so PHP artisan db seed. So seeding completed successfully. So meaning this code was executed. And what will happen now is that this data will be added in our, so na-add na po ito sa ating database table. So if we will open our post, So we have this post from the seeder. So if we will reload this one, so sa pinakababa, so we can now see this, a post from the seeder. Okay? So this is the data that we add using this seeder. Okay? So this is useful for if you have administrator accounts during deployments. So just run the DB seed, then you'll have the accounts already. Okay?
Sir, pag yung seeder po yung gamit, pwedeng lagyan ng ng looping. O kunyari gusto ko ano.
Yes po, any manipulations po na gusto nyong gawin, you can do it in the seeder po. Pero kung gusto mo lang po ng dummy data, then you can set it in the factories po. So, parang dito po, name, faker. So, you can add a first name. So, you can modify this one po if you want. Or you can create a new factory po. Okay?
Thank you po, sir.
So, any questions pa po? So, do not worry naman po. So, we have our live and also the recorded version of our seminar naman today. So, as you do the activity for today, then just review the live po or the recorded version. So, I will be uploading po after the discussion session. So, any questions pa po? So, before we move on to the last topic that we'll be talking this day, that I will be discussing this day.
Okay, sir. Follow up lang po. Yung sa Tinker, kasi di ba yung email, dinedeclare natin na unique. If in case na magkaparehas, mag-return din siya na Kasi di ba parang per line po yung yung pasok natin doon. Paano reconcile? Yung sa Tinker po. Di ba pag nag-try ng user, parang per line kasi execution niya. Paano sir mangyayari kung yung email may kaparehas?
So, in that case, sir, there will be an error po pag invoke mo ng save na method. Since the validation po is nangyayari sa controller, and since the Tinker itself is though it is included in the Laravel application itself, but it is a separate instance. So, hindi to included sa controller, hindi din to included sa Vue or anything sa ating Laravel application, but it's included in your Laravel application. But with that, you can execute code that, or pwede mong ilagay yung code na nilalagay mo sa controller. Parang ganun lang po. Pero, for lang po talaga, for populating dummy data yung Tinker. Or testing your code po.
Bali sir, yung validation niya, mangyayari pag in-execute ko na yung save?
There's no validation po in Tinker. Ang mangyayari lang po is the MySQL level validation. So, yung error po na pinaprompt, if ever unique yung email, tapos nagkapareha yung email, then may error lang po nalalabas. Kaya po dito sa sa factories, dito sa user factory, may method dito na ginamit na unique. So, which means the faker or this plugin, since this is a plugin for generating random emails or generated emails for dummy data. So, kaya po ginawa tong unique kasi the data population itself is wala pong error validation. Kaya po ginawa nila ito yung unique for the dummy data.
Thank you po, sir. Salamat po.
Okay, so any more questions pa po? Okay, so I think none.
Hello, sir.
I think okay. So, sige, sir.
Sir, tanong lang. Sa Seeder po ba, meron function na mag-i-import from Excel para i-populate? Sa Seeder po, sir, na class.
Sa Seeder.
Meron, sa Seeder po.
wala pa po ako na try na ganun, sir. So yung ginagawa ko po talaga, if yung Excel yung gusto kong i-import, so ginagawa ko lang po is I'm just writing my own script po to parse the data, or kadalasan kasi mangyayari yan if Excel file, so CSV format talaga yung mag-handle for the uploading or the migration of data. So ginagawa ko lang po is I've been writing my own scripts in PHP to translate the CSV data po to to what you call this, for executable PHP or model data generation po. So ganito po, baling the same po sa ginawa ko po kanina. So I am parsing the data in CSV to be in this form po. Yung pag-instantiate at pag-assign ng data and so on po. Since achievable po kasi siya, especially using JavaScript or PHP and ganon po.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay po. So, any more questions pa po? Okay, so I think wala nang question. So the next topic that we'll be talking before we move on to our activity for today. So this is about the using of a DB class. Okay? Okay, so going back to the collections. So the ORM and collections, eloquent ORM, then collections. So there are many methods that you can use with this. So it's not only limited with where. So you can also use all. So available methods. So we have find, fresh, and so on, except. But if you want to use the SQL in Laravel, then we will use the DB. So queries. No, it's not the. I think it is in database. Database queries ORM. Digging deeper. Wait. So packages. So database. So using the DB class. Okay, database getting started. So I'll be sending the link. Introduction. Okay, so if you want po that you will use if the ORM po is if hindi po kayo satisfied sa ORM or meron po talagang mga functionalities, especially in large applications or large projects na hindi ma-meet using the ORM. Okay? So that the Laravel provided this DB class. So for example, if you really want to use your if you really want to use the MySQL queries, then you can use that one in your Laravel also. So you'll just have to import this one. So sige, I'll just copy this one and paste it in our. No, this is user factory database seeder. So we'll try it in this controller, the user controller. So I think let's create a new method na lang for us to test this. Let's define new method for us to test our DB function index. It's okay pala na gamitin na lang natin yung index for us to para hindi na tayo gagawa pa ng new so let's get gamitin na lang natin to. So using DB class. Okay, so I think let's back out this one. Charles James Gosling at gmail.com. Password. Okay. Okay, so the database DB. No, let's get the user na lang muna. User post. Let's try those DB functions. So using the select, we can also use the select in DB. So using the method select, and this is called bind parameters. So let's try that one. Post DB select all post where user ID where post that user ID is equal to 3. So let's die dump this one. Post. Let's comment this one for now. So you have an error in your SQL syntax. Okay, line 1, where a post user ID is equal to 3. Okay, so syntax error violation. So where did
Kailangan ata ng from, sir.
okay, this is from. So yun. So thank you po sa comments. So here, na-render na po yung data from our database, which is which fetch the data from our database table. Okay? So if you want to manually use or have your queries in your Laravel application, then it is always doable po. So again, if may mga functionalities na hindi masatisfy ng ating ORM, then we will going to use now the database class from Laravel. So hindi lang po ito limited sa select. So we have also we can also insert, we can also update, delete, drop, unprepare. So unprepared, multiple connections, and so on. So I think let's proceed to, since this is getting started, this is the query builder now. which handles, which provides the methods. So as you can see in here in the topics, you can select statements, raw expressions, joins, unions, basic where clause, advanced where clause, ordering, group, limit, offset, so on and so forth. So for example, this is, okay, let's try that one. So db table post, then get. So where the user ID is equal to 3. Get post. Okay, so let's reload our, so same output pa rin. So we have 3 outputs. So if we will use, so we also have, we're not limited to get, so we can also use first. So the first data that the query will have. So, and we can also use join. Okay. Get. So if we want to use retrieve a single row or column from table, so we're through with this. We've demonstrated this one already. So using the where, so the same that, okay, the same for what we did here. So for the where, find, block, then, so maybe let's try the join. So join statement. Where, okay, joins. Okay, let's try joining the table of our post and our post and our users. So select, okay. So place it in the right side for my reference. Let's comment this one for so that you can have this reference in the code. So post, so db table post, then join users, where where post that user ID is equal to the users that ID. Okay, and we will now select the all value from our post. No, post, then users that first name, then users that last name, so I think so we will get all of the data. We can also add where post No. User ID is equal to 3. Okay. Let's reload our okay, so undefined variable. So we made a mistake. So since this is post. Okay, so we have 3 items and okay, so these are the columns that we fetched. All of the columns for the table post. So the ID, user ID, title, body, and created at, updated at, and also the last name and the first name for the user. So which means we fetch the data from our database, but in uh, not with the ORM way, but in using the DB class. Okay. So any questions or clarifications? Hello?
Sir, tanong lang po.
Okay po.
In terms of ano po, speed, ano ang best option gamitin lalo na for big chunks of data? Is it yung eloquent relationship or yung ito po, database class?
Actually, they are the same, sir, since the ORM only uses the DB class in the or under the hood. But in the overall, sir, it only depends of how you structure the data, since we cannot predict in the implementation of how many data that you're going to render, sir. So if you are chunking at least 1,000 rows of data, then with considering the relationships, then I think that will slow down the application a little, sir. And also depends with the platform, sir. So, but if you are only concerned with the speed of that of the render of with the data rendering from the MySQL, then I think they're the same, sir. But the difference with the ORM is that there are many processes under the hood that is happening with the ORM. But still, in terms of efficiency, the using of DB class is a much faster or a bit faster compared to the ORM. But in terms of data rendering, so parang isahan na yung pag-render ng data niya. So hindi na all of the data are complete and structured, especially if you are preparing your RESTful API po. So in that case, the recommended approach po is using ORM if we are dealing with RESTful API, or if we have mobile applications that consumes data from our website or Laravel application, then the recommended approach is using ORM po.
Thank you, sir.
Okay po. So, sino pa po may question? And all of the example po is available naman po sa ating documentation. So, we have wide range of example in here. So, like using the joins, left join, right join, cross join. So, advanced join. So, I think bago lang to. They recently add this one since I don't have the experience, don't know how to use this one. So you may use the cross join method to perform the cross join. Cross join generates a Cartesian product between the first table and the join table. So I think this exists. Nag-exist na to pero hindi ko lang ginagamit. So mostly ginagamit ko lang kasi left join, right join, and so on. Subqueries. So we also have subqueries and the unions. Basic where clause. And we also have the where raw. Okay. So if you want to have complex conditions in your application, then this is very useful po. Kasi wala po ito sa ORM. Kung gusto niyo po ng complex, especially po if you are rendering data in the dashboard. So, may mga reports po talaga na it's necessary to na hindi po kayang i-satisfy na ating ORM. That is why po, the Laravel provided this DB class for the advanced developers to use or utilize if they are developing large applications or complicated applications, especially in data management. Okay? So on and so forth pa po. Like having row, order by row, group by, the joins, and so on. So question po or clarification before we move on to our activity for today. Okay, none so far. So can I
Sir?
have, okay po.
Sir, may
Sige po.
pahabol lang.
Okay po.
Using this one, sir, yung DB, ano ba tong
Yes po.
direct?
Yung DB class natin.
DB class, opo. Doesn't mean na hindi na siya magre-require ng declaration ng model, sir, right? No?
Yes, sir. Hindi na po mag-require
Hindi na.
since we are not using the model naman, sir, since we are now using the DB class po.
So, pwedeng direct na.
Yes po, direct na po yung data.
Okay.
So we have here question po, sir, like mga store procedure, pwede na po ba sa DB class? Yes, sir, since you can execute, you can execute raw SQL in the DB class. So that is doable po in DB class.
Okay. Sir, question po.
Opo.
Sir, hindi ko lang sure kung may ibang session pa, pero paano sir yung yung process kung meron ka ng parang existing na database na malaki? Tapos gusto mong ilipat sa Laravel.
So that really depends in your preference, sir. If you like to use the ORM, then I think you have to manually develop everything from the models and so on based from your existing database. Okay? Since isa lang naman yun ka-command. So after you've done structuring your migration files and also the relationship, then in a single PHP artisan migrate, then you'll have your database design.
Opo.
Okay, so parang ganun lang. Pero if you want to reuse talaga, then I highly recommend using the DB class na lang. If you want efficiency or may time constraint talaga na kailangan ma-finish the project in this time or working na project, kailangan talaga working na to for this day, then the ano na lang, sir, is using the DB class na lang talaga.
Okay po. Sige po, sir. Sige.
Okay, sir.
Thank you po.
Okay, so any more questions pa po? So can we use relations using DB class? Yes po. Relations in DB class po, since we are executing raw SQLs po or built-in methods for SQL executions, I think the relationship doesn't matter na po. Since ikaw na naman po yung magde-declare, for example, left join. So ikaw lang yung may alam of what the table or how the tables were structured based from their relationship. So para pong ganito, kaya po may ginawa na left join and right join na na method for the developer to organize his relationship based from the table structure po. But compared to ORM, so you have to manually set talaga in the models. So did I answer your question po ba, sir? Okay. So,
Sir, last na lang po.
sige po, sige
Yung
po.
ano talaga, sir, yung ano. Kasi yung halimbawa, yung malaking database ko, meron na
Opo.
siyang password, tapos encrypted din. Paano ko siya i-reconcile sa...
Yung encrypted lang yung gamitin mo, sir, or yes, sir, yung encrypted, yung ginagamit mo po na password,
Opo,
yung
opo.
ilagay mo sa .env.
Okay. Ay, hindi sir. I mean, yung mismong, kasi di ba parang may laman na yung database namin na user saka password. Eh, yung password dun sa database ay nasa encrypted form na.
Okay. So, may algorithm po kayo for encryption. Yung parang ganon.
Kung database level siya, hahayaan na rin namin
Okay,
siya.
so database level.
Oo.
In that case, sir, there's no need for you to use the hash na, sir. If you want na to avoid errors, sir. So, is it okay na po na hindi gumamit ng hash? So, i-configure nyo na lang po yan sa register controller. So, for example, in here, since the encryption will be done in the database level, so in the registration po, di ba, ito po yung create.
Opo.
So, you're going to remove this one na lang, sir.
Okay po.
So, ganyan na lang po yung gagawin niyo.
Thank you po, sir. Yun lang, sir, yung medyo binivisualize ko lang kasi kanina. Kaya
Okay po.
tanong ko. Thank you po, sir. Mas madawan.
Okay po. Welcome po. Okay, so we have another question. Sir, pwede po malaman ulit ang disadvantage and advantage using ORM versus the DB class. Para malaman ko lang po talaga when to use ORM. Okay, so ORM are very useful for RESTful API. Though, in some cases po, so parang sa ginawa natin dito sa home, di ba? As you can see, isa lang yung kinuha natin na data, which is the post, but we're able to render and we save time from joining manually. So, di ba? Nakasave tayo ng time from joining manually the database. But, again, sa aking experience po, sir, so to answer it in a layman's term, so if you are using the ORM, then make sure that yung data lang talaga yung data or basic data or relationship or yung tables na, for example, from the post and the user. So, yun lang yung gusto mong i-render sa iyong front end or sa view. But, if there are some manipulations po talaga that the ORM does not support, like getting the average of the grades. For example, if you're going to manipulate that one in the database level or sorting them, so mas madali talaga mag-sort using the database level. So order by, so although meron din sa ORM na ganyan, but if you want to like for example, so gumagawa po ba kayo ng dashboard, sir, na may complex reports? So if gumagawa po kayo ng ganyan, like counting the or if you are viewing or if you want to have a graph that generates reports, then that is the time that you use DB. Since the render or the data that, for example, may functionalities kayo like data mining concepts or basic lang na plotting of or reports. So, in that way, using ORM, medyo mahirap talaga siya i-achieve. But if you are going to use DB, then it is very easy since you have the flexibility po to use MySQL query. So, ganyan lang po talaga. So, if the function, ito lang po ang tandaan nyo, if the functionality itself can be done using ORM, then why not use URM? And if the functionality is not doable with the ORM, then the best course of action is to use the DB po. Okay? So, did I answer po ba your question?
Yes, sir. Sir, hello?
Yes, sir. So, si James Gosling pala tong.
Sir,
Okay. Sige, sir.
Sir, yung ano lang, follow-up lang dun, sir, is mas mabilis lang mag-render yung ORM kaysa sa DB class. Tama po ba, sir? Yun lang din yung parang advantage ng ORM kaysa sa
Um,
DB class. Tama ba?
for me, sir, I think they are the same. But if you're going to think with the relationship,
Oo,
so
yes.
in terms of the data na ma-render ng ORM, medyo hindi siya kabilisan compared to DB kasi in terms of DB, makokontrol mo kasi sa DB yung number of columns. But in ORM, lahat ng columns included. So if you think it in the process level, so mas maraming process talaga na anong tawag dito? Mas maraming process talaga yung ORM compared to DB. Okay? So in that way, so mas mabilis si DB but mas kompleto ng data si ORM.
Okay. Noted, sir.
Okay
Thank
po.
you. Okay. Klaro na po.
Okay po. Pero may same po ng sinabi ko kanina, may mga functionalities or implementations talaga na hindi na-achieve ni ORM. So that is why meron tayong DB.
Okay. Sir, follow up dun sa question ni Sir James.
Sige
Pero
po.
pwede ko siyang gamitin ng sabay.
Yes po.
Kasi
Absolutely po.
kung pwede kong i-reserve yung DB class sa pag-generate lang halimbawa ng dashboard, then yung ibang process pwede kong idaan sa ORM.
Yes po. Yes po.
Okay. Thank you po, sir. Thank you.
Okay po. So any questions pa po?
Sir John po yata may tanong. John?
Okay. So questions? So I think everyone is okay. So can I have a exclamation mark to see if everyone is ready for the activity? Okay. So question mark. Okay. Okay, sir. Sige, sir.
Dun sa ORM, sir, pwede ka bang mag-connect sa dalawang database?
Yes, sir. So, okay. So we forgot to flash it now. So we have in the Laravel documentation, sir, we have several relationships, sir. So here we have one-to-one, one-to-many, one-to-many, tapos inverse, that is belongs to. Then has one of many. Then we also have has one through, has many through, many to many, polymorphic po. So ito yung changing for the advanced na po talaga to lahat. So querying relationships. So nandito po lahat sa documentation. So if you want to like many to many, so for example, ito may tatlong tables. So ganito po yung mangyayari. So project, may deployments. So has many through deployment. So in this approach, sir, is may dalawang class po related to this, or may dalawang model po related to this model. Okay, and this resource po is available sa ating Laravel documentation. So if you want to explore this one, sir, then this is a very powerful functionality that the Laravel has provided po for us to not manually code the relationship in the SQL query.
Thank you po, sir. Thank you.
Okay po. So any question pa po? Baka may follow-up question pa. Okay, tatlo lang po yung nag-respond sa exclamation mark natin. Okay, sir, is this a good practice on fetching the province name of a user, municipality, province name? Okay. So what are you referring with this code, sir? So a user or direct left join. Fetching the province name of a user. So you are So using with po. So using with. So si DV, si Sir Jeffrey. So user, municipality, province. So it's okay naman po, sir, as long as na-fetch nyo yung data nyo using the so I think ito po yung gusto nyong i-mean. Post user first name, parang ganito po. And hindi naman po bad practice. So it's a good practice po na ganito yung pag-access nyo. As long as the data in the object po exist, then you can have this type of access po. So ang nangyayari po kasi dito is from post, since we all know that we have one user, so that is why we are able to access the first name. Pero pag wala po tayong user, for example lang, then we cannot access po the first name. So ganun lang po. So it's a good practice po to have that one. Okay, so any more questions pa po? So use with po. Okay, so with the with, so it is the built-in method po for calling the function. Calling the function in our model para kasali po. So you can also place multiple po or multiple with. Okay, so wala na po bang question? So we have several participants po na nag-respond na sa ating exclamation mark, which means they are ready for the activity na. Okay, is it okay po ba na mag-start na tayo sa ating activity? So I'll be closing now the share screen. Is it okay po ba? Hello?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So, if you have questions naman po, I will be staying in the meeting po until 5 p.m. And for a while po, I will prepare the activity po. So, stay put na po kayo lahat sa classroom. Okay lang, sir, basta madali yung activity. Madali lang naman po. Included po sa ating na-discuss ngayon. Okay? So, I will stop now the share screen po. Okay po, I will push the code po. So, wait lang po. Okay? So, I will now stop the share screen and we'll prepare the activity for a while. And I will be back for it to explain.